always, always pick on me. They never, never let me be. I'm so very lonely, awfully sad. It's a long time since you've been glad. But I know what I'll do. By and by, I'll eat some worms and then I'll die. When I'm gone, you wait and see. They'll all be sorry that they picked on me.
Welcome to this special Halloween episode of Amusing Jews, where we celebrate Jewish contributors and contributions to American popular culture. When I think of Halloween, one of the first images that comes to mind is Betty Boop and her sidekick Bimbo entering a spooky cave where they encounter legendary jazz singer Cab Calloway, guised as a walrus, singing and dancing to his hit song Minnie the Moocher. A surrealist assortment of skeletons, ghosts, witches, and matricidal kittens join in the creepy fun. This 1932 cartoon, also called Minnie the Moocher, forged an eternal link between Cab Calloway and Betty Boop and linked them both to the greatest of all holidays, Halloween. I'm Jonathan Friedmann.
And I'm Joey Angelfield.
Producer-engineer Mike Tomren is working somewhere behind the scenes. Amusing Jews is a project of Adat Chaverim Congregation for Humanistic Judaism, the Jewish Museum of the American West, and Atheists United Studios.
We're excited to chat with Peter Benjaminson, a former reporter for the LA Times, Detroit Free Press, and Atlanta Journal-Constitution, and the author of several books, including The Lost Supreme, The Life of Dreamgirl Florence Ballard, Mary Wells, The Tumultuous Life of Motown's First Superstar, and most recently, The Life and Times of Betty Boop, The 100-Year History of an Animated Icon. Peter, welcome to Amusing Jews.
I'm amused to be here.
What drew you to the subject of Betty Boop?
My goal as an author has been to write the first book in every field because I hate competition. It cuts into everything. So this is my 11th book in which I've written the first book in the field. Although to be exact, there are other books about Betty, like How You Can Be More Like Betty, aimed at women, obviously, and others like that, but there was no biography of her. And I have written several biographies of other performers, Motown performers mostly. So I figured this would be a natural. Betty's nearing her 100th-year anniversary. There's no book about her. People will like to read about her. And there's a musical coming out, Boop, the musical, which I could use as a springboard or an aid to book sales. But that's the basic reason.
So when you talk about writing a biography of a fictional character who has existed in media but not necessarily as a real person, how does that differ from writing a biography of the pop stars and other things that you've done?
You have to pay attention mostly to what she's done on the screen, since she doesn't really exist. And I don't mean to shock anybody. It's okay. So I watched all her cartoons are available on YouTube. So I spent several months watching all her cartoons. I also couldn't help noticing that there are something like 30,000 Betty Boop products available for sale. So she must be popular. Those people don't put up products so that they just sit there. They want to sell them. Then I go into the book. I put in the book, there are lots of Betty Boop enthusiasts. Some of them, or most of them, I think, have relatives named Betty. And they collect, maybe they're deceased relatives, and they collect Betty Boop items as memorials to Betty's spirit and the spirit that they believe their relatives exhibited, a good thing. So there's a lot of reasons for Betty to be popular, and that's what I was trying to either take advantage of or help out, whatever way you want to look at it.
What are the origins of the Minnie the Moocher cartoon, and what was Cab Calloway's reaction to it?
Cab Calloway loved it. It was a hit record for him, and then to have a cartoon made out of it made it even better. Well, Betty was founded by the Fleischer, obviously a Jewish family. One of the many marketing advantages or tricks that they had was to feature a Betty Boop cartoon in theater in the same town And more or less at the same time that the band featured in the cartoon was having a live performance. So people would say, "Oh, wow, this music is great. Where can I see it?" And so would tell, "Well, he's right down the street. He's performing now." So the band leaders and financiers and members really loved it. It was like free publicity. It made them immense amounts or fairly large amounts of money. It was very cooperative spirit between the Fleischers and the various band members, most of whom were black.
Yeah, and I think he had obviously a sense of humor. Cab Calloway's music has that whimsical quality, but also kind of a spooky quality. So he must have appreciated as well the Halloween elements that were thrown into the cartoon.
He gave his townhouse and his racing horses. Each meal she ate was a dozen courses. She had $1 million worth of nickels and dimes. She sat around and counted them all 1,000,000 times. Oh, dee-ho, dee-ho. Oh, dee-ho, dee-ho. Dee-ha, dee-ha.
By the way, I should mention that his autobiography is titled Minnie the Moocher and Me, showing the extent to which it was a major success in his life. I mean, it was a hit song, then it was a hit cartoon, then his band became a hit as a result of the cartoon and the song. He was totally hooked on Minnie the Moocher. And it's a very interesting song because it uses a lot of underworld slang, drunk slang, et cetera, et cetera. I'm not sure how many of the people, at least of the white people watching it, knew what he was talking about, but it really sounded good. And the cartoon went along with that underworld flavor. But it was also high class because surrealism was becoming a big thing in those days. A lot of movies were being made, and in one of them they didn't have any actual buildings. The characters stood in front of line drawings of buildings. You know, look at that skyscraper over there. It was obviously a line drawing of a skyscraper on a piece of paper, but the characters treated it like it was a real building. And this appealed to a lot of people. There was Salvador Dali was doing serious surrealistic paintings in Spain, and that was a big new art thing. So the cartoons went along with it. Everyone felt, wow, we're not just watching cartoons. We're watching a major art development, which in fact they were.
Enjoying the show? Click like and subscribe. One of the fascinating aspects of Minnie the Moocher is the opening scene where Betty is scolded by her immigrant parents for not eating enough.
Why don't you eat? Just tell me once. Why you don't eat your husband, Papa? Huh?
Don't you sabraten Betty?
They use a mixture of German and Yiddish. You have a chapter in your book titled A Star is Born to Jewish Parents. Is it fair to say that Betty Boop is Jewish?
Oh, yes, I'd have to say that. She definitely is. She's not religious, though, which was basically the situation that her creator's family was in. They moved from, I believe it was Austria-Hungary to the U.S. in the early 1900s. They retained their Jewish mannerisms. I'm not sure how religious they were, though. They were like, you know, there were lots of immigrant groups around, Irishmen, et cetera. They all continued to use their, employ their characteristics, speech, et cetera. So yeah, that in that first scene, Betty's parents are trying to feed her more than she wants to eat. You know, that's the usual thing. I don't know if that's particularly Jewish, but your parents want you to eat a lot so you can grow up to be a big boy or girl. But especially girls, they don't want to be big, fat girls. They want to be big, attractive girls. So that's basically what Betty was doing, saying, no, I'm not going to eat another plate of that stuff. Come on, give me a break. She didn't say it like that, but that was the general idea. And, so it was a Jewish American family.
Yeah, and I think you mentioned also that in some sense, they kind of picked on or made fun of the more old country sort of immigrant Jewish culture. They themselves were very assimilated. So that could have been, a factor as well.
Yes, well, I'm glad you brought that up because a lot of the animators, they were almost all male, and what they all wanted to do was blend in. They didn't like it that their family spoke Gaelic or Hebrew or whatever, or Yiddish at home. They lived all together in Times Square and hung out on the weekends with some shady women, basically prostitutes, and probably weren't ethnically similar to them. So they had a whole different life, they were having a good time, and they hated it when their parents spoke in an accent. That would indicate that they were foreigners, which they didn't want to be. They wanted to be American.
The song Minnie the Moocher is full of references to illicit drugs, like the character Smokey being described as Cokie, a user of cocaine, and the phrase kick the gong around, slang for smoking opium. Can we interpret the cartoon as a drug-induced hallucination?
Well, I think the Fleischers creatively combined surrealism and drug-induced hallucination. And of course, there's an overlap. Who knows what each individual actually gets when they're taking drugs? Maybe surrealism came from drug users. I don't know what the people in Spain were doing. It's certainly a druggy experience. So sure, there was a tremendous overlap. It just made it more respectable to make it surreal rather than druggy. But as you say, that cartoon united the two.
Yeah, and the imagery in it is really interesting. I think particularly with Cab Calloway taking on the walrus persona and that choice of doing that. Of course, Betty Boop is a human, so they could have had another human character as, Cab Calloway as himself. But that walrus choice that's always seemed a little bit strange to me. Do you have any ideas about that?
Maybe I shouldn't say it, but I must repeat the idea that other people have mentioned, and that is that the walrus's long tail supposedly represented the genitalia of black men, which Cab was. They couldn't actually show someone portraying his own genitalia, but they could sure show the animal whipping its tail around.
He might have thought it was funny or even flattering.
Yeah, we don't know. Well, I mean, he loved the whole thing, so he was the object in something like that. You're right. It could easily be seen as flattering.
You write about how the Hays Motion Picture Production Code, instituted in 1934, put a stop to the more suggestive and adventurous elements of the cartoon. How did that play out?
From my point of view, and from, I'm sure, point of view of a lot of people who are watching the cartoons, fans of Betty Boop, it calmed everything down a bit and made it slightly boring. Betty, she moved from being a body to a homebody. She basically spent her time cleaning the house, and her dog, Bimbo, who was on the verge of being her lover previously, became a little puppy dog that, slept in a little doggy bed. It was like everything calmed down. The Fleischers still managed, because they had to go along with the code, they still managed to get unusual stuff in there. But they had a rough time doing it. I think the popularity actually dropped, but not that far, because Betty was they still made Betty very amusing. She and Bimbo would fight off a crow attack, or Bimbo would be taken by a dog catcher, stuff like that. But they tried to make it as amusing as possible.
Yeah, it seems like the motion picture code kind of ruined everything for a while, particularly in the 30s when I think mainly Jewish producers and animators in this case were so scared of being blamed for all the social ills because the Jews run Hollywood and are, poisoning the youth and so forth and so on, that they almost went overboard in taming things, it seems.
Well, certainly calmed things down. Betty was still very popular. She and Grampy, the grandpa character, would do some amazing things. One of the cartoons that really shocked me was Betty was dusting away in a rural suburban house. And for some reason, there was a farm right next to her where a farmer was feeding cows.
Be human. Animals can cry.
she immediately followed Graffy, who turned out to have been an animal rescue person. Then they grabbed the farmer and put him in their basement and had him whipped, had forced him to run on a treadmill that created food for various animals.
As your book's title suggests, Betty Boop is an icon. Her image is still used in advertisements, clothing, billboards, logos, and assorted tchotchkes. I grew up around her, and many of my family members are still big fans. What's the secret to her staying power?
I think Betty's secret is that she's an independent woman. She never got married. She never seemed to have children, but she had numerous different jobs. She was a lion tamer. She ran a pet store. She was a movie actress, a movie star. This fits into the fantasies, well, not necessarily fantasies, that a lot of women have. That's the kind of life that many women obviously would like to lead. Independent, making their own money, not having to depend on a man, but also flirting with men and being attractive enough to attract men who want to flirt with them. Having a little dog, living in a nice house, flirting with men, and getting jobs in Hollywood. That seems like that's a real attraction to a lot of women. It's independence without being tied down necessarily to husband and children. Betty, it's interesting how the cartoonist got around it. Betty had the young children with her, but they weren't her children. They were identified as her brother, or nephew or something. So she got the pleasure that women get, and other people obviously get, out of having children, but without actually having them. She never had to go through the whole thing of getting pregnant, then having the kid, then getting, your figure back and all that stuff. This apparently bothers women. Not that a woman I wouldn't know, but I could see why it would. So you could have everything, but you don't have to go through the biological and financial trouble of actually producing the kid.
Yeah, she was kind of like the fun aunt, I guess, to all these children, as you're describing it. You're also kind of reminding me that Barbie was popular, is still popular for kind of the same reason. She has all these wonderful, fantastic occupations, never got married, very independent, sort of does what she wants. Maybe Betty Boop, I hadn't put this together, is sort of a predecessor to Barbie in some sense, and maybe we'll see a Betty Boop movie before too long.
You've just given me another book idea, Barbie versus Betty Boop. That's pretty good. But, it does seem to be right, because those figures are really, really popular by women. Let's see why that shouldn't be. Obviously, men want to be independent. They want to do whatever they want to do in life, want to have romance, but they don't want to be tied down to heavy financial and social responsibility. It's how to have great fun in life without being tied down. I guess everybody wants that to some extent. Although a great many people, they'd go ahead and have families. If you have 12 kids, you get tied down and working 2 jobs. But they like the benefits that they weren't doing. So they could have it both ways by watching Betty Boop.
That's right. Vicarious living through Betty Boop. Thanks so much for joining us, Peter.
Thank you.
And to our audience, now back to your regularly scheduled lives.
Amusing Jews is here to amuse you. If you like being amused, go ahead and click like and subscribe.